Okay, good morning. Today is the 22nd day of Adar, and it is March 15th. We're in the fourth reading of Parashat Vayakhel-Pekudei, the two parshas together. And in the fourth reading, we read about the actual construction of the tabernacle. The construction went according to the instructions that God gave Moses, but there were a number of interesting things that happened along the way. And one of these things is described in chapter 38, verse 8. And I'll read the English. He made the copper washing urn, or the basin as we called it 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, sorry, and its copper stand from the mirrors of the women who had produced multitudes, and who now gathered at the entrance of the tent of meeting. What is going on here? Rashi says like this. What does it mean that he made the urn, the basin, with which the priests washed their hands and their feet, out of copper that came from mirrors? What's the idea behind that? So Rashi says, the women of Israel possessed copper mirrors in which they had been looking when they adorned themselves. And even these they did not withhold from bringing as contributions for the tabernacle. Moshe at first rejected them. Moses rejected these because they are used for arousing the Yetzer Hara. They're used for adorning themselves to find favor in their husband's eyes, so that they would be aroused towards them. However, God said to him, accept them, for these are more precious to me than everything else, since through them the women produced multitudes, many multitudes in Egypt. For when their husbands were weary from the back-breaking labor, they would go and bring them food. The women would go and bring their husbands food and drink and feed them. They would then take these mirrors, and each one would look at herself in the mirror with her husband and lure him by saying, I am more beautiful than you. In this way, they would arouse their husband's desire, and they then had relations with them and conceived and gave birth there in the fields. As it says, under the apple tree, I aroused you. That's a verse from the Song of Songs. This is thus a meaning of what it says, from the mirrors of the women who had produced multitudes. From them the urn was made, which serves to create harmony between a man and his wife. That is, by giving of the water inside it to drink to a woman whose husband was jealously suspicious of her, yet she still was seen to yet she was seen to conceal herself with another man, because she was, I don't know why they translate it this way, because she was seen to have concealed herself, meaning she had been in private with another man. Now you can be sure that these were actually mirrors, for it says, the copper from the wave offering was 70 kikar, with it he made, so on, and the urn and its base are not mentioned there. So what does that mean? That the copper that was donated was used for other things in the tabernacle, and only the copper that came from these mirrors was used to fashion the urn. So the urn and its base are not mentioned there. From this you may deduce that the copper for the urn did not come from the copper of the wave offering. This is how Rabbi Tanchuma explained it, and Onkelos, the Aramaic translation of the Torah, also translates it in this way, with the women's mirrors being the translation of marot, mirrors, in Old French. Similarly, we find in Ishaya, Vagilyonim, which Yonasan ben Uziel translates as Mechaizda, and the mirrors. So that's technical. But I want to get to the crux of what is going on here. The women were giving up, as we know, the thing that's most dear to them, which is what allows them to make themselves beautiful in their husband's eyes. And they were willing to give this to the tabernacle. Now, that was a very big sacrifice as far as they were concerned. Nonetheless, Moses didn't accept this. He didn't want to make their urn. He didn't want to make anything out of these mirrors. Why is Moses this way? We know that his relationship with God is such that he's actually married to the divine presence. He's so close to the divine presence, to God, that he left his wife. He had no relations with his wife from the time of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, from the time that God revealed himself there at Mount Sinai. And he left his tent, he left his own house, and he was no longer in a marital relationship with his wife. They didn't divorce, but they were in a sense separated. And the reasoning that Moses had was that at any moment, it was not like a regular prophet where he had to prepare and do many things for the divine presence to reveal itself to him. It would reveal itself to him at any moment. He didn't know when. And so he always wanted to be pure. In other words, if he would be with his wife the regular way, so there would be moments after they had been together, before he had gone to ritually immerse, that he would be impure. And he wanted to prevent that. So Moses sees the purpose of man, in a sense, to rise to the level of being ascetic, of being removed from the cravings, the natural cravings that we have that make the world go round, especially when we're talking about procreation. Moses wanted all of the Jewish people to be prophets, but he wanted it on his terms. And his terms were that he was capable of reaching such a level where he was no longer connected to the carnal needs of a regular human being. So for that reason, he wasn't willing to accept these mirrors because they'd been used to bring the man and a woman together, a couple together. On the other hand, God told him, you're wrong in this case. Why are you wrong? Not because I don't want everyone to be a prophet. I also want everybody to prophesy. I also want everybody to reach a level where they become aware of the divine presence at every moment. But Moses, most people cannot achieve it using your path. We read in yesterday's Shir Shel Yom, the song of each day, Ani amarti Elokim atem. I said, says God, you should be like God. What does it mean, being like God? It means that you have a strong connection so that at every moment you have an awareness of what God wants from you. God wants that, but not the way that Moses thought about it, not the way that Moshe Rabbeinu thought about these things. That to achieve that level, a person has to divorce himself from the physical reality of his body and of his procreation needs and so on. And so God said, on the contrary, these mirrors that were used in the proper way, the relationship between the husband and wife that was used in the proper way is dear to me. As he says, as Rashi quotes, they're more dear to me than everything else that was brought for the tabernacle. Why is it more dear? Because it is a consecration, it is a sanctification of our physical being. Meaning they took the very basic level of a relationship between husband and wife and they consecrated it. They turned it into something holy because it was used in order to preserve and increase the number of people in the world, the number of Jews in the world, and under the harshest of circumstances, where most people can't even think about these things. Yet they sanctified it by committing themselves, sacrificing themselves to continuing to preserve the growth of the Jewish people. And so says God, this is much more dear to me than any other kind of donation that was given to the temple, to the tabernacle. This is actually the topic of the Song of Songs. We read a verse in Rashi from it, which said, Tachat atapuach ovaltich. Under the apple tree, I aroused you. Why does it take a verse? Why does the Medrash take, and Rashi quotes it, a verse from the Song of Songs Because we know the Song of Songs relates or uses the metaphor, the parable of a relationship between a husband and a wife, between a wife and her beloved husband, to symbolize the relationship between the Jewish people and God. In other words, that when household is dedicated to promoting Yiddishkeit, it's dedicated to promoting Torah, to promoting sanctity in the world, then even the base level of our physical existence, even the marital relationship between the husband and wife, becomes the most beloved before God. And as the sages say, all the songs are holy, but the Song of Songs is the holiest of all. So I wish everybody a good day, and hope to see you soon in Los Angeles. We haven't taken off yet. We're still waiting.
Have a safe
And
flight.
hope to see you later tonight or tomorrow morning. All the best.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Robert.